The hunt begins as we arrive at the farmhouse after a short drive from Craddock, and the excitement really starts to build as we load the rifles into the truck. We had spent the previous day at the range shooting both paper and gongs out to about 800 meters to check zero and to validate our drop data, but shooting a gong is not quite as exciting as shooting an animal, especially when you're after a species that you haven't hunted before. In today's episode we are going after fallow deer, and what makes this different to most of the hunting we've done in South Africa is that fallow deer are not an indigenous species here. They were introduced more than a century ago and they've really thrived in this particular part of the country. It's all eyes on the hills as we scan the bushes for movement, and after about 10 minutes we do eventually spot a group of hinds moving up the mountain.
We've just spotted some fallow deer up on the mountain there. They just moved across into the next valley, so we'll just try and go over and see if we can get a shot on them. See what happens.
Hierdie groot bome in die dam.
Ja.
Die regterkant is die eerste groot boom as jy op gaan amper tot bo op die koppie.
Oh, ek sien daar. Daar's takbokke, kom. Twee, swarte, rooie.
Kom Johan, kom.
We head up the mountain in an attempt to find a good vantage point and a spot from which Johan can take a prone shot.
Daar waar die dam wel so opgaan, letterlik daar op. Soos die dam wel nou toe opgaan teen die berg. Letterlik daar op, waar in het ek hulle nou verloor.
The animals have spotted us and they aren't keen to hang around, but Johan finds a semi-comfortable spot to set up, and when they appear again at about 470 yards, Johan settles the crosshairs on the largest hind and takes a perfect shot. Remember, this is more than just a trophy hunt. We are hunting primarily for meat, and this animal will take up a good amount of freezer space. The commotion suddenly brings out a big buck, and it's all action once again as Hein sets up and we all wait for the animal to give us a shot. Unfortunately, he vanishes into the bush almost as quickly as he appeared, and it becomes a waiting game for the next 20 minutes. We see a duiker running through the grass on the other side of the valley, and I'm not sure if the duiker disturbed the deer, but the next thing we know, the stag appears out the bush and makes a break for it. And that's just the way hunting goes, you don't always get a chance. We move further up the mountain to flatter ground, and as we glass across the opposite side of the valley, we spot two shadows under a bush at 750 yards. There's a stag bedded down in the shade and a hind standing up next to him. I'm given the opportunity to actually set up and take a shot, but I decided to give it a pass. I just didn't feel comfortable with the way that the wind was moving through the valley. I've taken shots at animals even further than this before and done the job, but at the end of the day it comes down to whether you feel that you understand the conditions or not. And in this instance I decided to let Nico, who is more experienced than me, set up for the shot. The thing about long range hunting is that you do have time to set up and get comfortable, and this can be a massive advantage. It was interesting to watch how Nico handled the wind. He took a reading with his anemometer and then basically doubled it, having learned from experience that the wind through the kloof is always stronger than the wind at your shooting position. It doesn't look like the stag is in any rush to stand up, so Nico decides to go for the hind, hoping that he'll get an opportunity to shoot the stag as well when it stands up. He gets comfortable, takes his time, and he lets that bullet fly.
Ek gaan nou stop.
Ek sien hom nie.
Gaan net regs na daai ander kant toe.
ander was range.
Range I'd add 30 to what you were shooting.
740.
7. Hy kyk terug.
It's difficult to see where the second shot landed, but we could see by the way that he was running that he'd been hit hard, and after a short burst of adrenaline, he eventually crashes in the grass.
Ja, hy gaan lê, hy gaan lê.
Daar voor hy boom.
He's down. Right
As
boys,
ek het die merker is voor hy hoë boom.
Right Nico, jy het hom los. Randall, kom julle vir hierso?
Well done.
750, eh? Lekker buddy. Woo! Two buck. The bigger buck was lying down, and the smaller buck was standing, mainly quartering away, but then it turned broadside. So we decided to take a shot on the smaller buck, and after the shot, see if the bigger one stood up. So the bigger one stood up, ran a bit to the right, but stayed at the same distance. So we got on a shot on the second one. Looked good. He ran about 80 meters and went down. So we're hoping to find both of them when we get there.
We head out to the other side of the valley to retrieve the animals, and Nico's really happy.
Ja, my job is awesome.
This is the second buck I shot at about a while ago. This animal was at 750 yards. On the first animal it looked like I might have hit it a bit high and spined it. So on this one I held a little bit low and behind the shoulder. And if you look at the entry on the shot, maybe a little bit further back than I aimed. Height I'm pretty happy with. I always try and go dead on, point of aim just below that. The rifle I was using is a Tikka T3 Super Varmint 300 WSM, and then the bullets that I'm using are 178 grain ELDMs shot at about 2,970 foot per second. This is the first animal I've shot with it. I've used a lot of AMAXs, and this is textbook performance on them. In on this side, out on the other side, good amount of damage so the animals don't go too far. Otherwise they're quite difficult to find. The long range thing, once you get to the other side, everything looks a bit different. So it's always good to keep someone where you shot from to just mark the animal, and you move around and you communicate with them to find it.
As night falls and the clouds start to move in, we settle in at the farmhouse, light the fire, and just relax after a good day of hunting. We have really good reason to smile. It's been a fantastic day, and it's only day one. We still have a few more days of hunting, and we head to bed knowing that there's plenty of action still to come.